An ex-Special Force soldier is tasked with moving trapped oil workers and their families from a refinery to safety, passing through the most dangerous roads in the Middle East called the Highway of Death. Hello and welcome to IM Movies. The movie begins as a private rescue team set out with helicopters to extract some Chinese oil refinery workers who have survived attacks from mercenary forces in the Middle East. As the team led by Commander Dragon Luo lands at the refinery, Professor Chung, the leader of the refinery, welcomes them. Luo assures the professor that he'll get them to the green zone safely and tells her that they'll be leaving early the next day. Meanwhile, Chris meets with his younger brother Henry and his team of mercenaries. Henry pays Chris his share of money for a previous job and offers him a new deal that involves kidnapping Chinese oil workers.
One more mission, 5 times the money.
Chris rejects the offer, but Henry tries to convince him, saying he'll get the opportunity to avenge 5 of his men that died fighting the Chinese. Chris still rejects the offer, and Henry tells him that their dad would have taken it, and Chris ignores him and drives away. Later, Chris plays with a little boy as his mother, Soraya, watches. Soon, Owen, an employee of one of the oil companies called Unicorp, arrives in a truck and goes to work on a water pump, which is the village's only source of water. Chris tells Owen that the pipes are disconnected and they won't work. However, Owen tells Chris that he could help them talk to Unicorp to give them water, but they'll need 100 grand for the bribe. Later that night, the rescue team begins to plan how to evacuate everyone through the Highway of Death to the green zone. Meanwhile, at the village, Soraya asks Chris how he plans to get 100 grand to fix the water, and he tells her that he'll think of something. The next day, the refinery workers begin to shut down the facility as they prepare to leave. Soon, Professor Chung uses a dongle to shut down the entire system and writes down all the passwords in her diary. Then she hands it over to the company's chief engineer, Mei. Later, Luo informs Professor Cheng that they need to leave right away. Soon, they begin to load the buses, and Professor Luo asks one of his men to do a head count. Later, Commander Lu's assistant, Shen Wei, tells Professor Chung to join Bus 8 with her assistant and asks Mei to join Luo in Bus 1. Meanwhile, Max, an informant for the mercenaries, marks Bus 8 with spray paint. Later, Luo welcomes Mei to sit in Bus 1, but she decides to stand. Luo briefly inspects his men, and they begin to move out. Soon, Bus 1 hit a bump, and the bag with Mei falls. Mei won't sit as she's holding a grudge against Luo, who is also her father. Mei is angry at him for abandoning her as a kid with her sick mother. As they approach the Highway of Death, they pause, and Commander Lu tells his men to watch out for attacks. Luo begs Mei to sit down, and they continue the journey. Later, they come across 2 cars blocking the road. Luo sees it's a trap and crushes them with his bus, causing an explosion on the sides of the road. Soon, they come across a sandstorm, and Luo asks his men to close all the windows as they drive through the storm. Later, Luo realizes that their comms were no longer working as he tries to communicate with the other buses. At this time, Chris and Henry's mercenaries begin to chase after them. Chris spots Bus 8 and informs the team. Soon, the mercenaries attack buses 8 and 11. During the attack, they kick out one of Luo's soldiers from Bus 11 and take the buses away. After a while, the remaining buses get out of the storm and they realize that buses 8 and 11 were missing. Meanwhile, as Henry and Chris lead the hostages out of the bus, Chris confronts him as he realizes that the men are not soldiers as he had claimed, but Henry tells him they don't need to look like one.
What's a criminal supposed to look like, bro, huh?
Later, Luo tells the chief pilot, Captain Azir, about the abduction and asks him to bring the 2 helicopters. Luo orders Shen Wei to follow the second helicopter and asks Mei to help him navigate the desert, promising to protect her. Soon, the helicopters arrive and they begin to scan the area. Soon, they see evidence that the sandstorm was created with a jet engine. As they continue to scan the area, they find Bus 11 abandoned. Luo sees one of his soldiers and asks her to connect with the other buses. Meanwhile, as they transport the hostages, Chris expresses his regrets for trusting Henry.
I knew I couldn't trust you.
Soon, Shen Wei's helicopter spots them, and Henry opens fire at the helicopter. Shen Wei informs Luo that he'd found the mercenaries, and Luo orders his pilot to head towards Shen Wei's location as the other buses head to the green zone. Meanwhile, Shen Wei continues to exchange gunfire with the mercenaries and blows up their lead vehicle. Soon, Chris orders Knox, one of the mercenaries, to replace the lead vehicle as Shen Wei continues to attack them. Later, Chris stops the truck and decides that they need to take out the helicopter first. Henry decides to take the hostage to the exchange site, while Knox manages to shoot down the helicopter. Later, Captain Azir spots Bus 8 and informs Luo. Luo drops from the helicopter and finds some of the people on the bus. One of the men tells him that they've taken 5 hostages. At the exchange site, Chris attacks Henry and asks him who hired them. Soon, Owen comes out of a building and Chris realizes he is the one behind the attacks. Then Owen reveals himself to Professor Cheng as the man behind the attacks. Later, Owen asks to see Chris privately and tries to convince him to join his team. Chris rejects the offer and asks for his payment. Owen refuses to pay him and tells him that the job is not yet done, and Chris decides to leave. However, Henry tries to convince Chris to join them, reminding him of how he bailed on their father.
Just like you did when you bailed on our own man.
Chris asks Henry to bring his money to the village at 4 o'clock sharp, then drives away. Henry turns to Owen, promising to handle Luo on his own, but Owen tells him that he has failed and kills his men. Soon, Owen orders his men to take their bodies to an abandoned radio tower, making it look like a Chinese payback. After a while, Commander Lu spots Chris in the desert and uses a sniper gun to get a clearer view. Soon, Captain Azil tells Luo that they are now low on fuel. Luo continues on foot and finds Chris playing with a little boy in the village. Chris asks him if he's lost, and Luo says he has come for his people, but Chris tells him that he's got the wrong guy. Luo moves to fight Chris, but the little boy interrupts, and he leaves. Later, Chris decides to go find his brother at a radio tower, and Luo tails him. At the radio tower, Chris finds his brother dead. Later, he hears Luo's footsteps and hides. Luo walks in quietly and sees the dead body. Soon, Chris attacks him, and they begin to fight. During the fight, Luo accuses Chris of killing his people.
You killed my people!
But Chris says he didn't kill anyone. Luo throws unpulled grenades at Chris, and Chris tells him that they killed his brother too. Luo pauses, and a French mercenary walks in, asking for his money. Chris angrily tells him to get in line and mistakenly pulls the pin of a grenade Luo is holding. The French guys realize the danger, and they run outside. As soon as they get outside, the French mercenary orders his men to shoot. As they start shooting, Luo and Chris take cover, while looking for weapons to defend themselves. Soon, Luo supplies grenades for Chris to throw outside against the French. Soon, the shooting stops, and Luo asks Chris to check if they've gone. As Chris bends over to check, Luo shoots in the air and points a gun at him, asking him for answers, but Chris tells him that he'll never get an answer if he's dead. Chris leaves and finds his truck in a bad state. Soon they introduce themselves, and Luo finds out that Chris understands Chinese. At the refinery, Owen attempts to boot the refinery system, but realizes they need the dongle and passwords.
That's not happening without the dongle.
Owen asks the professor for the dongle and the codes. She tells him it's a complex process, and Owen shoots one of her workers dead. Owen asks her again, and shoots another one dead. Soon he gets up and asks her again, but this time her assistant tells them to track her phone. At the village, Professor Cheng's phone rings, and May picks it up but couldn't hear what they were saying. At the same time, Chris entertains orphaned kids, and Luo gets a call from Haiming, saying they are now safe at the green zone. Later, Luo asks May about the call she just received. May asks her father if they could trust Chris, and Luo tells her that he must be a decent man for taking care of orphaned kids. Luo joins Chris to entertain the kids, but Soraya soon announces dinner for the kids. Chris begins to hit on May, but Luo doesn't want it, and informs Chris that she's his daughter. Soon the dogs begin to bark, and they realize that Owen's men must be around. Luo and Chris position themselves in different places, taking out the mercenaries silently. Soon, Knox spots Chris on a tower and launches an RPG at him. Chris falls to the ground and soon realizes that they came for the phone. Chris grabs the phone from May and takes it outside to the mercenaries, but the villagers soon surround them with weapons. Chris offers to give them the phone, but Knox tells him that they came for the bag only. Chris rushes back inside, grabs the bag, and throws it at the mercenaries. Knox picks it up and they leave. And May gets angry, but Chris tells her that he has to protect the people. May tells them that the bag contains the dongle and passwords they need to run the refinery, explaining to Chris that there are underground pipes that supply fuel directly to the sea. They decide to go to the refinery, and Chris says he has a truck that can crash through the gate. As they prepare to leave, May tells them not to use a gun at the refinery to avoid an explosion. The mercenaries arrive at the refinery, and Owen takes the bag to the control room and asks Professor Cheng to get to work.
Good working.
Professor Cheng activates the system, and the oil begins to flow. Soon, the mercenaries spot Chris and Luo driving toward the refinery and begin to shoot at them. However, they eventually get through, crashing into a metal tower filled with white powder. As they get out of the truck, Owen sees them and his mercenaries come out in numbers to fight Chris and Luo as they navigate their way to the control room. Owen breaks the dongle inside the machine so they won't be able to stop the flow. Then Owen orders Knox to kill the professor and her assistant once the tanks are full and walk out. Meanwhile, Luo and Chris continue to help each other as they fight the mercenaries. Later, Owen sees Luo and introduces himself. As they continue to talk, one of the mercenaries attacks Luo, and more keep coming as he fights them off. Later, Chris joins him, and they both continue to fight the mercenaries as they make their way up to the control room. As they get close to the control room, Knox orders the two mercenaries with him to join the others, but Chris quickly takes them out as Knox shoots at him. Luo arrives at the scene, and they devise a way to distract Knox, and it works. As soon as they get in, Chris grabs Knox, and Luo tells Professor Cheng and her assistant to run to safety. Knox begins to fight them, proving to be a formidable force. Later, they engage in a gun battle with Knox and soon run out of bullets. Knox begins to shoot in their direction, and they decide to devise another plan to trick him again. Then Luo manages to grab Knox, pushing him through a glass pane. Then, Luo tells Chris to go after Owen.
You go. I got this.
Outside, Chris sees Owen leaving the refinery with 2 oil-filled trucks and runs after him. Soon, Chris sees May driving one of his cars toward the refinery. He joins her and they go after Owen. Meanwhile, Luo and Knox continue to fight in the refinery, using a spring to jump from one end to the other as foam fills the room. Back on the road, Owen sees Chris and May chasing him, and he begins to shoot at them. Back at the refinery, Luo finally launches Knox with the spring into a steel structure and he passes out. Meanwhile, Owen diverts his desert car away from the road and May follows him. Soon, Owen tricks them into a slope, and Chris warns May to stop, but she insists and crashes the car. Soon they see Luo coming with the jet engine truck and join him as they continue to chase Owen. They activate the jet engine for a high-speed chase, and they soon crash into the oil tankers at high speed. The oil tankers explode, killing all the mercenaries. But Owen manages to escape with bruises and drives away. Luo tries to go after Owen, but Chris tells him that the truck is stuck. Soon, they use a lever to lift the truck and activate the jet engine, driving at speed as Chris hangs from the side. They soon catch up with Owen and hit his car towards a cliff. Luo gives Chris a countdown of 5 to jump as they approach the cliff. The truck falls through the cliff and Luo manages to save his daughter as they both hang from a rope attached to Owen's car as the truck falls down the cliff. Owen laughs as he tries to drive away, but the weight of May and her father pulls him down the cliff, slightly missing them as they fall on the side of the cliff. Soon they begin to call out for Chris, but couldn't find him. At this time, May sees a torn picture of their family in her father's pocket and realizes he's always wanted them around him. May tells him that she now understands what he goes through on his mission to save people, and they both hug it out. Soon, Chris grabs Luo's leg as he climbs up and they help pull him up. Chris expresses his love for May in Chinese, but Luo disapproves of it, saying Chris still has a lot to learn. Soon, they realize they are now stuck on the cliff and begin to shout for help. As the movie ends, the characters find solace and hope in their shared experiences. The film's themes of resilience, camaraderie, and the power of unity are underscored by their journey from danger and conflict to redemption and newfound purpose. Thank you for supporting my small channel. If you like this video, share and like to help this channel out. Thanks for watching and see you at the next one.